We are on 1241 North High Street, Columbus, Ohio, for evidence, crime scene photos from the trial of America's biggest serial killer, which is a photographic exhibition about the life and crimes of Kermit Gosnell, the abortion doctor. But he was convicted of murdering babies and killing his patients, several women patients he killed. In a 30-year killing spree, he may have killed hundreds, the grand jury said maybe thousands. These photographs are evidence. They were taken by law enforcement officers for a court case. So that's why you're looking at the truth here. They're unimpeachable.
Hello and welcome to the Ann Phelim Scoop. It's just me today, Phelim McAleer, just this part of the equation. Ann McElhinney is currently on a plane. So what's on the show today? We bring you the scoop on disinformation. It's always the people shouting the most about it that are actually doing it. Why you need to be very, 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 very skeptical about the mainstream media's coverage of Israel and the Israeli war that's currently going on. And our crime scene photo exhibition opened in Ohio, the Gosnell Crime Scene Photo Exhibition. A huge success, a stunning exhibition. It's still going on. Stand by for all the details. If you know anyone in Ohio, you'll want to know all the details about it and get them over to it as quickly as possible. So, first of all, on the show, I want to talk about the bombing of the Al-Ahai hospital in Gaza on last week. Now, I'm not an expert on Israel. I'm not an expert on Palestine. But, funny enough, I am an expert on journalism. And I am actually an expert on doing journalism in a place where there is a large state army in conflict with an irregular, guerrilla style, if you want to call it terrorism, army, force, soldiers. And I was a journalist in Northern Ireland during the Troubles. So when I saw the headlines about the bombing of the hospital in Gaza, a number of things immediately jumped out at me. Well, first of all, I thought it was a terrible, terrible tragedy, and I just thought, hospital bombed in Israeli airstrike, 500 dead. I assumed they had done their due diligence. I assume that they had seen the planes. I assumed they had seen the rockets being fired. I assumed, or that the Israeli Defense Ministry had admitted to it. It was only when you get buried deep in the story, you see that the source for it, if they named the source, was the Palestinian Ministry of Health. Now, you don't. Why you be taking the Palestinian Ministry of Health for his word for it that the bombing was from the Israeli Air Force? That doesn't make sense in the first place. Also, but you do, in a conflict situation, in a highly politicized propaganda war conflict situation, you do not take the claims of one side as gospel without verification. You do not run headlines, especially headlines that have the possibility of setting the world on fire. You do not run claims without putting them in quote marks. You do not, in fact, you don't even put them in quote marks. You say, hospital bombed by Israelis, says Hamas, because I don't think there is a Palestinian health ministry. It's a Hamas health ministry. They're all dedicated towards the political struggle, even the health ministry. It was a complete failure of journalism, and even the New York Times even had a fake picture of a building that had been bombed, pretending it was the hospital. You have to ask how on earth this could happen. I think this is a willingness to, I think the media are in some kind of crisis. They cannot accept that the good guys, Hamas, would have massacred so many men, women and children in Israel. They don't want to accept this. They're in denial. And they're now hoping, they were delighted in a strange way that they then were able to have a counterbalancing atrocity by the Israeli Air Force. Now, as it has now emerged, the most likely solution to this is to what happened in that hospital was that it was a missile being fired by Hamas into Israel that misfired and landed at the hospital. From my time in Northern Ireland covering the Troubles, an annoyance by me that the British media would run stories about controversial incidents, repeating verbatim what they'd been told by the police, what they'd been told by the British Army, by the British government, and reporting it as facts, not saying according to the British Army, according to the police. And the same thing happened in Southern Ireland. I remember a shooting of a dissident IRA person in Southern Ireland, and the police at the time the Southern police issued a press release saying after a shootout, and I said to my colleagues in the newsroom, this smells to me like disinformation. They're saying there's a shootout, and I bet in three, and then they'll get all the headlines, man killed after shootout with police. And I said they'll get these headlines, they'll get the story planted in people's minds, and 3 to 4 days later they'll quietly release the fact that the assailant's gun wasn't fired, that the only gun fired was from the police, the state actors in this. And that's exactly what happened. So, but journalists know this. This is not, I'm not teaching these guys anything. They know that you don't do this. They know that when something like this happens, that you write claimed, you put quotation marks, you caveat everything until you know. Because that's what journalism is. It's not about getting, you should never carry one side. Unless you can witness it with your own eyes, you should never carry a claim as a fact. It's just the way it is. That's just rule 101 of journalism. So they broke this rule. I think the Israeli government is losing the PR war. Hard to believe that a country that has just lost 1,200 of its citizens, including people who were attending a music concert, men, women, and children who were tortured before they were killed, who were killed because of their ethnicity, because of their religion, not because they were military people. It's hard to believe that they have to win a PR war, that the PR isn't automatically on their side against the people who did it. But that is the way it is. And one thing that occurred to me that no one's really spoken about. People said, oh, it was the Israeli Air Force, it's a war crime, it's genocide. There is a huge difference between an accidental bombing of a hospital. Now, it didn't happen apparently, but let's just imagine the scenario that the media initially tried to put out there, that this was a bombing by the Israeli Air Force. The Israeli Air Force send text messages to people saying, please evacuate this area. They drop leaflets, we're going to bomb this area, and they give people time to evacuate, and they bomb the area or the building. Of course, in war, people miss, civilians get killed accidentally all the time, every war, every time. The accidental bombing of a hospital, the accidental killing of civilians is not a war crime. It's not part of genocide. This is another thing that the media have taken on board and are running with. Fighting a war is not a war crime. Hamas killing innocent civilians, that goes against the rule of law. Deliberately targeting and killing non-combatants goes against the rules of war. Trying to bomb military targets and accidentally bombing a school or a hospital is a terrible, terrible, terrible thing. But, under the rules of law, and the media know this, it's not a war crime. It's not genocide. Unless it was done deliberately, but we know it's not done deliberately. We know that they're bombing, they're trying to do precision bombing, and they're succeeding. Now their aim is to wipe out Hamas, and I don't know how they're going to do that, because as far as I can see, Palestine is Hamas, Hamas is Palestine. I don't know how you go in there. It's like trying to wipe out the IRA. When they melt into the local community, when large parts of the local community support them, I don't know how you wipe that out. I'd love to know what the Israeli idea of victory in this is, because that's the big problem with wars now, is people don't know what does victory look like. That's what when America went into Iraq, what did a victory look like? Saddam Hussein being overthrown, or the crushing of radical Islam, that might have been a victory, but no, they wouldn't do that. They went in respecting Islam, respecting radical Islam, funding radical imams as part of some kind of outreach program. So I don't know what the Israeli idea of victory is. I don't know how they're going to measure victory, but to be fair, I haven't studied it. I haven't really. As I said at the beginning, I'm not an expert on Israel. I'm not an expert on Palestine. I am an expert on journalism in conflict zones. This was a failure of journalism. There is an ongoing failure of journalism, and you need to be very, very careful, and you cannot believe a word that you are reading in the mainstream media. So just bear that in mind when you read about the next atrocity in Palestine. On other news, on Friday we opened our newest project, last Friday. It's a crime scene photo exhibition with real photographs from the Kermit Gosnell case. So you might remember Kermit Gosnell. He's the abortion doctor from Philadelphia who is serving 3 life sentences in Pennsylvania for murdering babies born alive and for killing his patients. Now, we've written a book, a New York Times best-selling book on the story. We've produced a podcast which went into the top 10 of true crime podcasts across the planet. We've written a play, produced a play in New York on it. We've done a lot of work on this, and as part of our research, we came across these stunning crime scene photographs. I think there was several hundred photographs, and we thought people need to see these, because actually they're not pro-life, they're not pro-abortion, they're nothing. They're just evidence that was taken, photographs that were taken for evidence in a court case. And we decided, America has a tradition of crime scene photo exhibitions, from the 20s with those mob murders. The New York Post would take photographs of crime scenes in the 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s, and 60s, and 70s. And we thought, and they would be made into a photo exhibition. We thought we should do this with the Gosnell case. So we opened the exhibition in Columbus, Ohio. It's called Evidence: Crime Scene Photos from the Trial of Kermit Gosnell, America's Biggest Serial Killer. We opened in Ohio because it's a big story in Ohio now. If you put on the TV in Ohio, there's an ad about abortion on a couple of ads on about abortion every 15 minutes, because Ohio will be voting on an amendment to the state constitution to make abortion legal for any reason through all 9 months of pregnancy. So we thought this is the place for it. So we've rented a venue in Columbus, Ohio. We have hired a doo-wop to produce the photographic exhibition. Now you may be wondering what a doo-wop is. So a doo-wop is a disillusioned urban arts professional who wishes to remain anonymous. This doo-wop, disillusioned urban arts professional, is made a living putting on photo exhibitions and art exhibitions across the world, and has recently become, in her own words, disaffected. So we didn't know we were asking for a doo-wop at the time, but we said, is anyone out there could help us with a photo exhibition? And this person was sitting in a coastal eastern city. That's all I'll say. This person has asked to remain anonymous, this doo-wop, and she immediately got in touch with us and said, I'll help you because I want to do my doo-wop. I want to get my doo-wop on. So the doo-wop turned up, was absolutely brilliant. The exhibition is amazing. We've had an opening night. They're really expertly curated. There's 70 photographs that start at the beginning and lead you through Gosnell's House of Horrors. He was committing murder in plain sight, and he was allowed to get away with it for 10 years because when you put the word abortion on a building, the Department of Health don't want to know what's going on behind closed doors. 2 women died in that clinic. They went in healthy, came out dead. No one from the Pennsylvania State Department of Health cared or even visited to check on conditions there. One thing I would say is most of the photographs are not graphic. Funny, most of the pictures actually show you the banality of evil, because there was 20 people working in this clinic. Gosnell was also one of the biggest opioid dealers in Philadelphia. He sold prescriptions to drug dealers, so he had this weird place, this House of Horrors, where women were being killed, babies were being aborted up until birth and killed. And then you had drug dealers roaming the buildings to 2 or 3 and 4 in the morning. It was a proper house of horrors, but it also, funny enough, it was a workplace. There were 20 or 30 people working there, so they had a place to clock in. You can see, in some of the photographs, there's the clock where you clock in. They had timesheets, they had in-house jokes, they had office parties, they had birthday parties. Now, we do have pictures of babies that Gosnell killed. We do have them, but they're in a different room. There's the main exhibition, and then they're in a different room behind black curtains, and you can pull the curtain if you want and look at them, or you can just look at the rest of the exhibition. So that's what we felt that was important, and some people did at the opening night. Some people did want to look, and some people didn't want to look, and we felt it's a wonderful way to make sure that people get to see what they want to see, and we're not putting graphic images in front of anyone who's not fit to see them. But so it's in Columbus, Ohio, in the short north. You can find out the details of where it is at evidencetheexhibition.com. Evidencetheexhibition.com. The photo exhibition is called Crime Scene Photographs from the Trial of America's Biggest Serial Killer. It's important, as I say, because if Ohio passes the amendment on November the 8th, then babies of the size and age that Gosnell got away with killing but was eventually convicted for, they will be able to be killed legally in Ohio after November 8th. So let's have a look at some of the photos. I give a tour of the exhibit just as it opened. So if you can't go to Ohio, check this out. You'll get a taste of the exhibition here.
We are on 1241 North High Street, Columbus, Ohio, for Evidence, crime scene photos from the trial of America's biggest serial killer, which is a photographic exhibition about the life and crimes of Kermit Gosnell, the abortion doctor. They're photographs of his crimes, but they're not political. He was an abortion doctor, but he was convicted of murdering babies and killing his patients, several women patients he killed. In a 30-year killing spree, he may have killed hundreds. The grand jury said maybe thousands. These photographs are evidence. They were taken by law enforcement officers for a court case. So that's why you're looking at the truth here. They're unimpeachable. Who says crime doesn't pay? This is the house that Gosnell lived in. It was like a hoarder's paradise, by the way. It was trash upon trash upon trash. The best story I like is they were in raiding his house, and they realized they could hear music, and they didn't know what it was, and suddenly they went into the room, and there was Gosnell playing Chopin on his piano as FBI agents in hazmat suits went around his house looking for baby body parts. Yes, and one of the detectives went downstairs into the basement in her yellow hazmat suit, and she looked down at one stage, and you could see it getting black and black and black, and she realized that it was insects and fleas in the cellar crawling up her hazmat suit. Did she get out of there quickly? If you ever doubt that he was a serial killer, these are the jars of babies' feet that he kept in the clinic. He would cut the feet of some babies. At one stage there was 40 of them. He kept trophies. This is what you do, you keep trophies. And he kept remains. Here's the remains that were found in red bags. He kept them in Minute Maid jars. He kept them in cat litter jars. He kept them in orange juice jars. He liked to keep his trophies. He liked to keep, to show his skill at killing, I suppose. And I remember he was able to point to one of the detectives and said, "That's the remains of Mrs. Munger's baby." So he knew what he was doing. Those files, by the way, are still in situ. I've been in that room a few months ago. 10,000 files. The Philadelphia Department of State, their health department, never went into this clinic for 17 years, even though women and children were dying. Bodies were being carried out. Several women died. And they raided the place, closed it down, and have never secured the files. So people's private lives are still open to the public. I looked at some of the files. They have women's phone numbers, details, private medical stories. Another thing with these files was there's 10,000 of them, and I realized each of them represents an abortion. Each of them represents, some of the women had several abortions, and to me there's about 10,000 of them, and they represent 10,000 lives that no longer exist. This is a time clock, an old-fashioned time clock. There was 20 or 30 people working there who clocked in and clocked out. It was like a little cult. This struck me as particularly ironic. Obviously, one member of the staff had a baby, and other members of staff sent her a congratulations. And the card says, "Every baby is a miracle." This is in an abortion clinic that performed hundreds of abortions a week. But one member, and she got a cheque for £15. I think that she must have been given that card on the day the clinic was raided, and then she wasn't able to cash her cheque.
The best part of the night, last Friday night, was getting to talk to the people who came in. They all had very, very interesting things to say about the impact the photographs had on them. And it's always nice. Sometimes you know an image so well that sometimes it loses its impact, but it was great to see people looking at them for the first time. So let's have a listen to some of the opinions of the people about the photographs.
What do you think?
Oh, it's amazing. I didn't know what to expect. I'm post-abortive, so I'm not going in the room with the curtains, but
Right.
The rest of it is amazing.
I would say this is very impactful. Yeah. I just like how the images expose like what the truth is when it comes to like abortions and everything. So it's like you know what you're signing up for. Especially the first one, it was like, kind of like real effective. Yeah.
I think it's wise. I think I was the one that told you I took my daughter to see Gosnell when it first came out.
Yes.
But she didn't want to see the baby, put the picture of the baby boy.
Yeah.
Afterwards I pulled it out. I said, "Do you want to see?" She's like, "No." She will be seeing it.
Yeah. I saw you looking behind the curtain there. What did you think of the images behind the curtain?
Shows it for what it really is.
Yeah.
Disturbing how evil somebody can be.
It's just shocking. This is our medical system.
George Orwell, the great British commentator and writer, said, he was a journalist as well, he worked for the BBC, and he said, in a time of deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. So you're actually in the middle of a revolution here. I want to welcome you to the revolution. You're very welcome. And I want to welcome Pastor Brian Williams to speak about the revolution. And pastors from the Hope City Church, many of you may know him, some of you may not, but we reached out to him and asked him to speak at this because he knows the local scene and he's probably a much better speaker than I am. Telling the truth at a time of deceit is a revolutionary act. Pastor Williams, please lead the revolution. Thank you.
I'm not here to lead a revolution. I'm just here to be a part of one. And so I want to thank you for extending the invitation. Thank you all for being here tonight on a Friday night. I was thinking about this evening and what I might share to encourage you and to perhaps even inspire you to do what was just spoken to us, to get the word out, to have people come. I began to think about my own story. So I'm not here tonight as a pastor, even though that's what I do. I'm here tonight as a father. I'm proud to be the father of 7 beautiful children. My wife and I have been incredibly blessed by God. And so, my oldest is 8, so you do the math. Pretty much for the last 7 or 8 years, I've been in the hospital. I've been before nurses and doctors. I've been in the delivery room. Of those 7 children, 4 of them were born through cesarean section. And so, I've had the full gamut of experience with the childbirth process, and I've seen firsthand the miracle of life from the moment of conception to the day when that baby makes its first cry, and a few days later when they begin to poop and pee everywhere. But I'm here tonight mostly and primarily as a father, but I thought about my story. I'm 37, so just give you some more background facts. I'm 37, so technically I'm an older millennial. And by every demographic measure, people like me really shouldn't be here. One, I'm a man, an African-American man, in case you can't tell. And I'm a somewhat younger guy, so statistically and demographically speaking, I shouldn't be here. So why am I here? Other than my faith in the Lord Jesus Christ and other than the fact that I'm a father, my story actually began with a picture. When I was 20 years old, I was a student at the Ohio State University, just down the street. There was a bus or van that was driving down the campus. Is that you? Why shake? Come serious. Let me shake your hand. I have no idea. Let me tell you what your efforts have. Oh, that's awesome. I saw your vehicle, and it had a picture, mutilated body part of a baby. And you know, this was before the era of Google Images, and so you know there was a lot greater shock value when you saw something graphic like that. This is before, of course, social media really took off. And so I was arrested by that image. I like to use this word though for you all who are here tonight. I was provoked. And all my life, as many of you probably can attest, growing up in the school system here in the United States, you hear this phrase all the time: knowledge is power. You guys heard that before? Knowledge is power. But what I've come to realize is that knowledge is also accountability. And so to be accountable for what you know, to what you've been exposed to, was a question I had to wrestle with as a college student on a clearly liberal campus.
So you heard it from them. It's a powerful experience. Tell your friends, tell your families, tell your churches about it. If you're near Ohio, check it out. Columbus, Ohio. Go to evidencetheexhibition.com. You'll get the opening hours there. We've done so much work on these stories, and the photos are maybe the final piece of it. But you never know, there might be other ways of telling this story. It's unique. I think this is the first, it's definitely the first conservative crime scene photo exhibition, but it may be the first conservative photo exhibition. And these are the things we need to do. Look, the left are having photo exhibitions about refugees. They're having photo exhibitions about Palestine, by the way. They're having photographic exhibitions about climate change. You know, this is what they do. They use the arts and the culture in every way. They have sculpture about this. They have photographic exhibitions about that. So we need to go into that space and tell our stories, tell the truth, actually. And that's what these photographs are. They're the truth. They're evidence. Gosnell's defense team never challenged one of these photographs. They're unimpeachable. They were taken by law enforcement personnel, not activists. So if you want to help us keep this exhibition going, if you want to help us bring this exhibition to cities and towns near you where there might be referendums coming up, where there might be initiatives coming up about abortion, or people you think people need to know the truth, you can donate at unreportedstorysociety.com. We can only do this because people like you help us hire do-aps, and and we're delighted that we need to hire more do-aps. So please donate to the do-ap fund at unreportedstorysociety.com. And Ohio is the only state voting on abortion this year, but next year there'll be a whole squad of states in the next election in 2024 in November, a whole squad of states voting on it. So we want to bring this exhibition just to give people information, by the way, just to say, yeah, you're hearing all these stories in the New York Times and in the mainstream media. Here's what it means behind those closed doors from photographs taken by law enforcement officers, not by activists. So evidencetheexhibition.com. We hope you can come along. We hope you can send your friends, your churches there. It's really worth seeing. And let us know what you think in the comments below. Thank you and goodbye.